Chris Tucker left stand-up comedy in the mid-1990s at the precise moment when staying would have made the most conventional sense. He was not pushed out. He was not replaced. He was not unable to do the work. He was, by the accounts of anyone who had watched him work the rooms during those years, among the most naturally gifted comedians the form had produced in his generation. Fast, specific, physically intelligent, with a voice that was its own instrument and a stage presence that made every room he walked into feel immediately different from what it had been before he arrived. He left anyway. The film career offered something the stand-up circuit could not offer at the equivalent level of commitment: scale, reach, and a different kind of creative canvas. The Rush Hour films did what landmark films do. They made him a household name of a different magnitude, in a wider culture, across demographics that the stand-up circuit had not fully reached. He made the trade that a certain kind of talent can make when the industry offers it. Katt Williams, during this same period and the years that followed, made the opposite choice. Not in opposition to Chris Tucker's decision, he was not responding to it, was not defined against it. He simply kept going deeper into the form that the circuit builds. The specials, the touring rooms, the accumulation of live work that the career was founded on, and that the career continued to deepen rather than replace. Here is the thing about those two opposite choices that the industry does not fully account for. Both of them cost something. Tucker's choice cost him the specific aliveness that the stand-up room produces in the comedian who keeps working it. Williams's choice cost him the kinds of resources and reach that the larger entertainment industry allocates to the people who perform in its preferred formats. Both men paid something. Both men received something. And the night they were in the same room, at an industry event in the mid-2000s, they were carrying their respective costs and receipts in full. What Tucker said about the stage that night is the part of the story this video exists to tell. Because what he said was not what anyone who had watched him walk away from it would have expected him to say. What Chris Tucker said about the stage arrived in the conversation at a specific moment, not the opening of the exchange, not the professional pleasantry portion that industry event conversations always begin with, but the later portion, the part of a conversation that arrives when the participants have moved past what they came to say and are saying what they actually think. He said that the thing he missed most was not the laughter, not the applause, not the specific moments in a set when the room gives back its fullest response. What he missed was the speed of it, the speed at which the stand-up room runs, the pace at which information moves between the comedian and the audience, the pace at which the adjustment is made, and the response to the adjustment arrives, and the adjustment to the adjustment is made in turn. He said that nothing in the film work ran at that speed. Nothing gave him information that fast, or required adjustment that quickly, or produced the specific kind of aliveness that comes from operating at a pace where there is no gap between action and consequence. He said, and this is the part of what he said that the people adjacent to the conversation have recalled most specifically, that he had not understood what the speed was until he no longer had access to it. That the specific quality of being in a room at that speed was something he had thought was available in other formats, at equivalent levels, and that he had discovered over years of working in those other formats that it was not. That the stand-up room's speed was its own specific thing, and that no other performance environment produced it. Katt Williams received this in the way that someone receives information they already had, but had not yet had fully named for them. Not as news, as confirmation from a source who had done what Williams had not done, which was leave the room and find out from the outside what the room was. The outside perspective on something you have never left is a different kind of knowledge from the inside perspective. Tucker had both. What Williams heard in what Tucker said was not a warning. It was not a case for or against any particular career decision. It was a description of the form at the level of specificity that only an honest account of loss can produce. Tucker was describing what he had, from the outside, learned about the thing he no longer had, and in that description, precise, undefended, said without the management that industry conversations usually apply to admissions of loss, was a kind of love letter to the form that neither man would have had occasion to write in the ordinary course of their respective careers. Here is the third thing about that conversation, and it is the thing that makes it matter beyond the two people who were in it. To understand what Chris Tucker said about the stage, it helps to understand what the stage had been for him, not in the abstract biographical sense, but in the specific sense of what the form had produced in him during the years he worked it, and what leaving it had meant in the years that followed. The stand-up room, at the level where Chris Tucker was operating in the early 1990s, is one of the most immediate performance environments available. The feedback loop is direct. The distance between what you offer the room and what the room gives back is measured in seconds. There is nothing between the comedian and the audience's response. No editing, no mediation, no revision after the fact. What happens in real time, and the comedian receives it in real time, and the adjustment is made in real time, and the whole process runs at a speed and a level of immediacy that no other performance format replicates. Film does not do this. Film has a crew and a script and a director and months of post-production between the performance and the moment when an audience receives it. The feedback loop is so long that it is barely a loop. By the time the audience responds to a film performance, the performer has been removed from the state that produced it for months or years. The stand-up room gives you the response while you are still in the state that produced what you are being responded to. Tucker, by the mid-2000s, had been working in film for nearly a decade. He had received the kind of audience response that film provides: the box office, the reviews, the cultural visibility. What he had not received, for years, was the response that the stand-up room provides: the immediate, unmediated, real-time response of a live audience to something he was producing in the moment it was being produced. Here is what most people who watched Chris Tucker's film career assumed: that he had found a better version of the thing the stand-up room gave him. More reach, more resources, more cultural impact. A trade that the form's less commercially successful format could not match. What he said to Katt Williams that night at the industry event suggests that the assumption was more complicated than that. The thing that makes the conversation between Chris Tucker and Katt Williams matter, beyond the two people who were in it, is the thing that it named, about the form, about what the form holds, about the specific quality that live stand-up comedy produces in the comedian who keeps working it that no other professional experience produces at an equivalent level. This is a thing that is very difficult to name from the inside. When you are inside the form, working the rooms, building the career from the circuit up, the speed of the room is simply the speed of the room. It is not experienced as something special. It is experienced as the normal condition of the work. The adjustment, the response, the real-time loop between action and consequence. These are the environment. They are not visible as gifts because gifts are visible against a background that does not include them. Tucker's departure from the form and his years in the different environment of film production had given him the background against which the gift was visible. He could see it precisely because he no longer had it. And what he was doing in that industry event conversation was giving Katt Williams a description of the gift that only someone who had lost access to it could have produced. Specific, honest, coming from the experience of absence rather than presence. What Katt Williams did with that description is evident in the work that followed the conversation, in the way that received descriptions of things you already have tend to show in the work that follows, not as a specific new direction or a specific new technique, but as a deepened relationship to what was already present. A person who has been told precisely what they have, told by someone who knows what it is because they no longer have it, tends to bring a different quality of intention to the having of it. The industry event ended. Both men moved through the rest of the evening's obligations and then moved through their respective careers in the years that followed. Tucker eventually returned to stand-up in the particular way that comedians who have left the form and spent years away from it return, slowly, carefully, with the combination of relearning and remembering that long absence requires. What the industry event conversation produced in Katt Williams is not separable from the rest of the work that followed it, but in the accounts of people who knew him during those years, who watched him make the choices about the work that the years required. There is a consistent description of a comedian who understood, with unusual clarity, what the form was giving him, who did not take the speed of the room for granted, who performed with the specific intention of someone who had been told precisely, and by the right person, what the room was. Chris Tucker described the gift. Katt Williams was already inside it. But being inside something and understanding what you are inside are not the same thing. And in that industry event corridor, the person who had left came back long enough to tell the person who had stayed what it was that they were holding. That is not a small thing. That is the kind of conversation that shapes what comes after it, even when neither person can see the shape it is going to take.